When you were there, she never really saw the depth of what you gave. You showed up every day with intention, the calls, the messages, the small gestures that said, "I care." You gave her your attention, your time, your emotional presence, and for a while she appreciated it. But then it became routine. You became part of her everyday background, always there, always available, always ready to listen, to comfort, to understand. She got comfortable in that certainty. She assumed that no matter what happened, you'd still be there waiting, understanding, forgiving. She mistook your consistency for weakness, your patience for lack of options, your love for something permanent. That's how people often lose what matters, not through anger or conflict, but through familiarity. She didn't realize that every time you reached out, it was an effort. Every time you stayed calm during an argument, it was a choice. Every time you stayed loyal when things got difficult, it was an act of love. She thought those things were endless, like a tap that never runs dry. She didn't see that your effort came from emotional investment, from caring enough to keep showing up even when things felt one-sided. But love doesn't survive when it's only fed by one person. At some point, the giver starts to run empty. You see, when you were trying, she had the luxury of not trying. When you cared, she could afford to pull back. When you chased, she could afford to walk slower, and that imbalance became normal to her. You became predictable, the one who stayed, no matter how she behaved. It's human nature to take comfort in what feels guaranteed, but the tragedy is, people often realize the value of consistency only when it disappears. The day you stopped calling, the day you stopped checking in, the day your silence replaced your words, something inside her shifted. At first, she didn't think much of it. Maybe she thought you were just busy or trying to make a point. But as time went on, the quiet started to feel heavier. The comfort she once had in knowing you'd always be there began to fade. That's when realization starts, slowly, quietly, uncomfortably. She starts wondering what you're doing, who you're with, and why you're no longer reaching out. She opens her phone expecting your name to pop up, but it doesn't. The moments she used to brush off now play in her mind. The times you were patient when she was distant. The times you were supportive when she was uncertain. The way you made her feel seen, safe, and understood. Things she thought she could always come back to. And now it's gone. You didn't have to announce your departure. You didn't have to make a speech or post something dramatic. You simply stopped pouring your energy where it wasn't respected, and that silence, that absence, became your most powerful message. Because now, she feels it. She feels what it's like to reach out and not find you there, to realize that the person she thought would never leave actually did. It's a strange thing how people only start appreciating peace once chaos replaces it. She'll start missing your calm energy when confusion takes over. She'll start missing your patience when others show her indifference. She'll start missing your consistency when the people around her are temporary. That's when it truly hits her. You weren't just someone who cared. You were someone who brought stability, presence, and genuine effort into her life. You see, love isn't about how much someone gives when things are easy. It's about recognizing the quiet sacrifices someone makes every single day to keep the bond alive. But when that recognition never comes, love can't survive. The truth is, she didn't lose you because you stopped caring. She lost you because she never realized how much you did care until it was too late. And now, your silence echoes louder than all the words you ever spoke. Because when a man with a good heart finally walks away, his absence becomes unforgettable. That's the moment she'll understand the presence she took for granted was the very thing that made her feel whole. Sometimes the greatest lesson you can teach someone is not through words, but through absence. When you stop trying, when you pull your energy back, something begins to shift inside her mind, something she never expected. At first, she might not notice it. She might even convince herself that she's fine without you. She'll go out, distract herself, maybe even post things to show she's doing great. But deep down, there's a void beginning to grow, a silence that starts to whisper truths she's been trying to ignore. Because when you were there, you were her emotional safety net. You were the steady hand that grounded her when life felt uncertain. And now that you're gone, the absence of that calm, that warmth, that reassurance, it starts echoing in her soul. It's not always immediate. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks, but eventually the silence starts to speak louder than your words ever did. She starts to replay moments in her head, the last conversation, the last look, the last message you sent. She analyzes every detail, trying to understand what changed. She'll ask herself, did he stop caring? Did I push too far? Was he serious this time? And as those thoughts keep repeating, she realizes she's no longer in control. The power she once held by your attention, your effort, your pursuit, it's gone. And that loss of control stings, because people often think they can keep someone's love forever, no matter how they treat them. But when that love pulls away, when your energy no longer reaches her, it creates a void she can't fill with distractions or denial. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing her to see what she did, not from anger or blame, but from clarity. The very thing she once thought made her strong. Her ability to act indifferent now feels like weakness, because now the one who stayed patient, who listened, who gave, is gone not with words, but with quiet distance. You see, silence has a way of speaking directly to the conscience. It doesn't argue, it doesn't chase, it doesn't justify. It simply exists, and in that space, the truth becomes unavoidable. She starts to remember the times she ignored your effort, the moments she took you for granted, the times she dismissed your feelings. She realizes how you were always there, even when she gave you reasons not to be. She remembers how you stood by her, how you saw her value even when she doubted herself. But now you've stopped showing up, and that's when it hits her. She lost someone who actually cared. And here's the part that most people never understand. Your silence doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from acceptance. You stopped trying not because you stopped loving, but because you realized love can't survive where it's not respected. You learned that sometimes the best response isn't explaining or proving your worth. It's stepping back and letting your absence reveal it. That's when she begins to feel what she never did before: your value, your presence, your impact. Now, every quiet night, every moment when her phone doesn't light up with your name, every time she reaches for someone who isn't there, she feels the weight of it. She starts to understand that the comfort she once had was never guaranteed. It was a gift freely given, and she didn't protect it. And that realization doesn't just hurt, it transforms her. Because now she's forced to sit with the truth that your silence isn't punishment. It's closure. The moment she finally accepts that the silence isn't temporary, that you're not coming back this time, is the moment her ego breaks, and her heart finally listens. That's when she realizes what she lost wasn't just a person. It was peace, it was security, it was genuine love. And now she'll miss you not just for what you were, but for what you made her feel when you cared. Sometimes silence teaches the lessons that words never could. When you walk away and you stay silent, it begins to create a storm in her mind that she never saw coming. At first, she might think you're just playing a game. She'll assume you're trying to make her miss you, or that you'll eventually cave in and reach out like you always did. But as days turn into weeks, and there's still no message, no call, no effort from you, that's when confusion starts to creep in. She'll begin to question everything. Why isn't he chasing me this time? Has he really moved on? Did he actually mean it when he said he was done? That uncertainty slowly starts to eat at her confidence. You see, she was used to being the one who held the emotional upper hand. She could pull back, act distant, and still count on you to bridge the gap. Your love was predictable, steady, consistent, and forgiving. But when that energy suddenly disappears, it creates emotional chaos. The silence becomes louder than any argument, more piercing than any goodbye. Because in that silence, her mind has no reassurance to hold on to, no closure to make peace with, no validation to calm her ego. And so she starts spiraling in her own thoughts. Every little memory becomes a reminder. She'll remember your laugh, your tone, the way you looked at her like she was the only one that mattered. Those memories that once felt comforting now turn into quiet torment. She'll begin to question the choices she made, replaying conversations in her head, moments where she could have been kinder, softer, more understanding. Regret doesn't hit her all at once. It creeps in slowly, disguised as curiosity at first. She might check your social media just to see how you're doing. She'll tell herself she's just wondering, but deep down, she's hoping to find a sign that you still care, that you're still stuck on her the way she's suddenly stuck on you. The truth is, your silence forces her to face something she's been avoiding, the reality that she's no longer in control of your emotions. She can't pull you back with a text or manipulate you with attention anymore. You've stepped out of the emotional trap she once held you in, and now she's left with her own reflection, a reflection of her actions, her pride, her choices. That's what silence does. It holds up a mirror. It doesn't attack, it doesn't chase, it just reflects the truth. And for her, that truth can be unbearable. But what she doesn't realize immediately is that your silence isn't revenge, it's healing. It's self-respect in its purest form. It's you choosing peace over pain, dignity over drama. And ironically, that's what shakes her the most. Because your calm, your indifference, your decision to simply move forward, it all speaks volumes. It tells her that she no longer holds the same place in your life. And for someone whose ego once thrived on being wanted, that realization cuts deep. Eventually, the thoughts that once made her feel powerful now become the very thing that keeps her up at night. She'll wonder if you've met someone else, if you've truly moved on, if you ever think about her anymore. The same silence that once made her feel in control now becomes the silence that breaks her composure. And that's when the shift happens, when missing you turns into longing, when pride turns into pain. Because in the end, she realizes it wasn't your presence that changed her. It was your absence. Your silence didn't just get into her head. It woke her up to the reality of what she lost. And sometimes that realization comes too late. When you finally walk away and stay silent, something powerful begins to happen, not just in her world, but in yours too. The energy shifts completely. You stop chasing, you stop explaining, and you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who never truly saw it when you were there. That silence, that stillness, becomes the loudest thing she's ever experienced. Because before, she was used to you filling every space, texting her, calling her, checking up, trying to fix things, trying to be enough. But now there's nothing, no messages, no effort, no validation, and that emptiness begins to speak volumes. She'll start to feel the void where your energy once lived. Maybe not at first. She'll distract herself, convince her friends she's fine, pretend she's unbothered. She might even post things to make it look like she's happier without you. But the truth, every post, every fake smile, every story she uploads trying to show she's moved on, it's all just noise to drown out the silence you left behind. Because the human mind can't ignore what once brought it comfort, and when that comfort disappears, It creates a void too deep to ignore. That's when the memories start flooding back, not the fights, not the disagreements, but the moments she took for granted. The times you stayed up late listening to her talk about her day. The times you reassured her when she felt insecure. The way you looked at her like she was the only one in the room. These moments start playing in her mind like a movie she can't pause. But now there's no sequel, no continuation, just silence. And that silence becomes a reminder of the love she lost, not because you stopped caring, but because she stopped appreciating. And here's the irony. She thought your silence would mean you were suffering, that you'd eventually give in and reach out. But the longer you stay quiet, the more uncertain she becomes. It messes with her ego because deep down, she expected to be chased. She expected you to break first, but when you don't, it shakes her entire perception of control. That's the power of walking away with peace. It shows her that your love was real, but your self-respect is stronger. It tells her that you finally learned to give your energy only where it's valued. As time goes on, she'll start to feel the emotional imbalance. You're at peace while she's still searching for validation. You've accepted what happened, and she's still fighting her pride. And that's when her ego starts to crack, when she realizes that silence isn't just an absence of words, it's a message. It's the message that says, I don't need to prove my worth to you anymore. And that message hits deeper than any argument ever could. The truth is, silence teaches lessons words never can. It forces people to face themselves. It shows them the weight of their choices and the depth of what they've lost. And in your silence, she finally sees the man she overlooked, not the one who begged for her attention, but the one who quietly chose himself. So while she's out there wondering if you still think about her, you've already moved into a space of strength and clarity. Because you understood that real power doesn't come from chasing love. It comes from knowing when to stop giving it to someone who no longer deserves it. And that's the moment everything changes. As time passes, something subtle but powerful begins to shift inside her. The silence she once thought she could handle starts to weigh heavier each day. At first, she might convince herself that you were just another guy, that she doesn't miss you, that she's perfectly fine without your presence. But deep down, when the distractions fade and the noise quiets down, she begins to feel the emptiness you left behind. It's not just your absence she feels. It's the loss of how you made her feel when you were around. She starts to realize that no one has ever seen her quite the way you did. No one listened with your depth. No one matched the energy, consistency, or quiet strength you brought. And suddenly, she's faced with a truth she tried so hard to ignore. You mattered more than she ever admitted. This realization doesn't come all at once. It starts small. Maybe she hears a song that reminds her of you. Maybe she passes a place you both used to go, or sees something online that triggers a memory. And each time that ache grows a little stronger. At first, she tries to shake it off, but memories have a way of staying. They linger, whispering in her mind when she least expects it. And that's when regret begins to surface, not because you're gone, but because she now understands how deeply you cared, how much you gave, and how rare that truly was. The irony is, while you were in her life, she didn't see it clearly. She was too focused on the flaws, the little things that annoyed her, or the things she thought she could find in someone else. But now that you've stepped back, your absence has amplified your value. She begins to see that the things she once complained about were actually signs of how much effort you put in. The things she took for granted were acts of love she may never experience again. And as she scrolls through her messages, wondering if she should reach out, her ego stops her, because admitting that she misses you would mean admitting that she was wrong. Meanwhile, your silence remains constant. No anger, no bitterness, no chasing, just stillness. And that stillness begins to speak louder than words. It tells her that you've accepted what is, that you've grown past the need for validation. That silence starts to echo in her mind as a symbol of strength, maturity, and emotional control. She starts to realize that your quiet confidence isn't indifference, it's peace. And that peace is something she lost when she lost you. It's not that she doesn't want to reach out, she does, but what holds her back isn't lack of emotion, it's pride. She doesn't know how to bridge the gap anymore. She doesn't know if you've moved on or if you'd even respond the same way. And that fear, the fear of discovering you no longer need her, becomes her greatest punishment. Because for the first time, she's the one overthinking, the one wondering, the one replaying everything in her head trying to make sense of what happened. Your silence, once dismissed as weakness, now becomes her mirror. It forces her to confront the truth that maybe, just maybe, she lost someone who was truly meant to stay. And while she struggles with that realization, you've already found peace in the distance. Because walking away wasn't an act of revenge, it was an act of self-love. You didn't do it to make her miss you. You did it because you finally valued your own energy more than her inconsistency. And ironically, that's exactly what made her start missing you in the first place. The beauty of silence is that it exposes truth without you having to say a word. She'll realize your worth not because you reminded her, but because you stopped trying to. And that's when it hits her that the man she thought she could replace was the one she was never meant to lose. There comes a point when the silence no longer feels like a temporary pause to her. It starts to feel permanent. And that's when it truly begins to hit her. She thought time would make her forget you, that ignoring the feelings would make them disappear, but instead, time only magnified them. The longer you stayed silent, the more her thoughts turned toward you. She begins to realize that no one has filled the space you left behind. The conversations feel empty, the attention from others feels meaningless, and the emotional connection she once took for granted now feels like a void that no one else can touch. Your absence begins to speak to her in a way your words never could. She starts replaying the moments that used to frustrate her, the times she thought you were too calm, too patient, too confident. And now those same traits become the very things she misses most. She misses your emotional stability. She misses the safety she felt in your presence. She misses how you didn't need to prove anything, how your quiet strength made her feel grounded. And while she may not show it on the surface inside, her heart is wrestling with regret. Because now she can see what you were trying to show her all along, that love doesn't need to be begged for. It needs to be respected. As she watches you from a distance, maybe through social media, maybe through mutual friends, or maybe just in her thoughts, she starts to notice something different about you. You've grown. You're not the same person who once tried to fix everything or prove your worth. Your silence has transformed you. There's a glow of peace about you, a new kind of strength that doesn't depend on her recognition. That transformation starts to bother her, not because she doesn't want you to be happy, but because she realizes she's no longer part of your story. The control she once had is gone. The emotional power has shifted, and deep down, that's what truly gets into her soul, knowing that she's no longer the center of your world. You're living your life without hesitation, building your peace, and becoming everything she once wanted you to be, but now it's not for her. The silence you gave her wasn't punishment. It was the space for her to see reality clearly. It's in that stillness that she begins to understand how much you really meant to her. Because when someone truly impacts your soul, you can't replace that energy. You can try to distract yourself, move on, pretend, but nothing feels the same. What she's really missing isn't just your presence. It's the version of herself that existed when she was with you. The version that felt safe, desired, and understood. And now she has to live with the reality that her actions pushed that away. But for you, this silence isn't about making her suffer or chasing validation. It's about peace. It's about choosing self-respect over chaos, clarity over confusion, and calm over conflict. That's what true strength looks like, the ability to walk away not out of pride, but out of love for yourself. And that's when the power dynamic flips completely. She'll realize that your silence wasn't empty, it was healing. It wasn't avoidance, it was growth. You didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because you started caring about yourself more. And when she finally understands that, that's when your silence stops being something she can ignore. It becomes the thing that echoes in her mind, reminding her of everything she lost and everything you gained. Sometimes the loudest statement you'll ever make is the one you make in silence.